A plate hit the floor with a crash, syrup splattering across the tiles, and Emma's breath caught in her throat. The laughter that followed wasn't playful. It was sharp, cruel, the kind that sliced through her chest like glass. Her wheelchair jerked back with a sudden shove, her hands flying to the armrests to steady herself. For a second, she thought she might tip over. The boys at the next booth leaned back, grinning like they'd just pulled off the funniest trick in the world. The diner went silent. Coffee mugs hovered halfway to mouths, silverware clinked down against plates, and not a single person moved to stop what had just happened. Emma's pancakes, her small comfort on a Saturday morning, lay scattered across the floor. Her hands trembled as she reached down, desperate to collect what she could, desperate not to give them more of a reason to laugh. The humiliation stung worse than any bruise could. One of the boys, tall, cocky, with a smirk plastered across his face, tossed his napkin at her like it was some sort of prize. His friends roared with laughter, their voices bouncing against the chrome and tile walls of Maplewood Diner. Emma swallowed hard, her throat tight, her eyes burning with tears she refused to let fall. She wanted to disappear, to vanish before anyone else could look at her like she was broken. A hand appeared beside hers. Not rough, not mocking. Steady, gentle. An older man with silver at his temples crouched, lifted the plate, and placed it back on the table. "Don't let them get to you," he murmured, though his glance flickered nervously toward the group of teenagers. His kindness was a single candle flickering against a storm, and Emma clung to it. But even as she sat upright, shoulders stiff, the sting of their laughter still echoed in her chest. The waitress hesitated in the aisle, her tray shaking in her hands. A few customers shook their heads in disapproval, but no one stood up. Emma felt like the whole world had just weighed her, measured her, and decided she wasn't worth the effort. She closed her eyes for a moment, praying quietly for the noise, the staring, the shame, to end. That was when the sound began, low at first, like a far-off roll of thunder. It grew louder, closer, until every fork froze in midair and every head turned toward the glass windows at the front of the diner. The vibration rattled through the floor, steady and powerful, until it filled the room with a strange kind of electricity. Outside, a line of motorcycles swung into the parking lot, chrome catching the sunlight in blinding flashes. Engines growled, steady as a war drum, shaking the air. Leather jackets gleamed black in the morning light, a single insignia stitched across every back. They parked in formation, engines rumbling like an oncoming storm. The bullies' laughter died in their throats. Their grins faltered, their voices stilled, and for the first time since Emma's plate hit the floor, silence wasn't cruel. It was heavy with anticipation. The boys who had been loud and smug only moments ago shifted uneasily in their seats. Their swagger evaporated as the deep rumble outside continued, shaking the glass panes of Maplewood Diner. Every person inside knew what those jackets stood for: strength, unity, and a reputation for never backing down. When the diner door opened with a soft chime of its bell, the hush that followed was thick enough to stop hearts. The first man who entered was tall, broad-shouldered, his beard streaked with gray and his eyes like steel. His vest, heavy with patches, carried a weight that made the air feel tighter. Behind him came another, then another, until the space seemed to shrink around them. Boots struck the tile with purpose, the sound echoing through the frozen silence. Emma's breath caught. Her hands tightened on her lap, her pulse racing with both fear and a strange flicker of hope. The man at the front, the one who carried himself like no one alive could intimidate him, scanned the room slowly. His gaze swept over the boys in the booth, who sat stiff, pale, and wide-eyed. Then his eyes found Emma. For a moment, the hardness in them softened, as though he saw past the wheelchair, past the broken pancakes on the floor, straight to her heart. He didn't need words. His look alone said he understood. He stepped closer, his boots heavy on the tile, and when he knelt beside her, the room seemed to shift. For the first time that morning, Emma didn't feel small or humiliated. She felt seen, defended, as though a wall of strength had risen around her. The leader's name was Ray. He turned his head slowly toward the bullies. The diner was so quiet that even the ticking of the clock over the counter felt too loud. Ray's voice broke the silence, low, calm, and carrying a weight sharper than anger. Emma couldn't make out every word, but the message was clear in the way the boys' faces drained of color, their hands fidgeting uselessly at the table. The laughter that had filled the diner earlier was gone, replaced with shame. One by one, they slid out of the booth, shoulders hunched, heads bowed, moving quickly toward the door. None of them dared look back at Emma. Outside, the line of motorcycles gleamed under the sun, engines still growling. The boys stumbled past the riders, forced to endure the wall of leather and chrome before disappearing into the distance. Their bravado had dissolved completely, leaving only the image of frightened kids who finally understood the weight of their cruelty. Ray didn't stop there. He signaled the waitress over, reached into his pocket, and set a thick bill on the table. "Make sure she gets whatever she wants," he said, his voice steady. "Pancakes, milkshake, pie. Bring her the whole menu if she asks." The waitress blinked back tears as she nodded, her hands trembling as she clutched the money. Then Ray turned back to Emma. He told her she was stronger than any coward who would try to break her down, stronger than people who hid behind cruelty because they had nothing else. And then, in a gesture that silenced even the whispers in the diner, he shrugged off his leather vest. Worn, heavy, and marked with patches that told a lifetime of stories, he draped it across Emma's shoulders as though crowning her with armor. "You're one of us now," he said simply. Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks, not the hot, humiliating tears from before, but tears that carried relief and gratitude. Around her, the diner stirred. Applause began softly, then spread until the sound filled the room. People stood, clapping with quiet reverence, some wiping their eyes. The waitress leaned down, hugging Emma, whispering that she would never sit in this place feeling invisible again. Emma touched the vest on her shoulders, still warm from Ray's back, and felt something ignite inside her. Hope, belonging, courage. She realized then that cruelty might exist in the world, but so did a fiercer, louder kind of strength, the kind that protected, uplifted, and reminded her that she was not alone. In that diner, on what began as the worst morning of her life, Emma's story was rewritten. What had started as a moment of humiliation became proof that kindness could rise from unexpected places, that even the roughest-looking strangers could carry the gentlest hearts. And as the applause faded and the engines roared back to life outside, Emma sat taller in her chair, a quiet smile breaking through her tears. For the first time in a long time, she felt unshakably strong.